If you're looking for a running back to help you get into the fantasy football playoffs or just jump up in the standings, I've got you covered with Week 13 edition of Running Back Waiver Wire Picks. I'll give you my top 5 running backs to target on waivers. And let's start with number 5. And that's a player who, well, he actually hasn't even played yet when I'm recording this for Week 12. And that's Snell of the Steelers. That game has been postponed multiple times. Right now, the plan is to play on Tuesday night, which is right before waivers run in a lot of competitive leagues. So we'll see how he does. Going to have a full workload because you may have heard James Conner is one of the several players on both sides who have tested positive for COVID. You may know that he had Hodgkin's lymphoma when he was in college. And so obviously there's risk there. Typically with players who've contracted COVID, they're out for 1 week, maybe 2. Could be different for Conner. Maybe it won't be. So Snell, either way, there's a risk here. Hasn't actually played super well this season, averaging under 4 yards per carry. But he is tied to a team that is, as of right now, undefeated. One of the best offenses in the league. At the very least, has a lot of touchdown upside because that's a team that scores a lot. So you want a starting running back on that team. Jalen Samuels also has been out. So if Snell is the RB1 in Pittsburgh, yes, he's worth the claim. The question is just for how long. So I wouldn't spend up too much fab on him. Try to get him on the cheap if you can and monitor that situation closely. All right, for number 4, let's go with a guy who's a lot more reliable. We can actually call him old reliable, the oldest running back that is still starting in the league, and that is Frank Gore. Why is he still out there? Well, he's on the Jets, but you know what? He is the RB1 without a doubt. In Week 12, only 21 rush attempts by the Jets in what was, of course, another blowout loss for them. Gore had 18 of those. They have no interest in letting any other running back touch the ball. You know that LaMichael Perrine, their rookie, who could have been promising, he is on IR, so there's nobody else who's in the way. And, I mean, he's basically one of the few bell cow backs now in the league. Obviously, the upside is limited. He hasn't gotten close to 100 yards in a game this season. But it should be worth noting that 2 of his best games, including his season high in rushing, 74 yards, came this last week. And the past 2 weeks, with more work, he's getting a little bit better. Problem is, touchdowns are going to be hard to come by, obviously, because it's the Jets. So if you want somebody who you know has a decent floor, especially in a standard league where those receptions don't matter that much, Gore will at least do the job for you. And that's better than we can say for a lot of these running backs these days. My number 3 pick is going to be a player that was kind of a hot pickup last week. We saw Jonathan Taylor wasn't playing. Still not sure what the status is for Week 13. But a lot of you gave up on Jordan Wilkins, or you're planning to drop him maybe this week. And I'm going to say do the opposite. Go back and pick him up if somebody else dropped him, or hold on to him if you did pick him up. Now, here's the thing. Very disappointing, obviously, this past week without Jonathan Taylor, like I said, and in what should have been a pretty good matchup with Tennessee's defense. Only 22 rushing yards on the day, massively disappointing. But here's the semi-good news. The yardage was low, but it really wasn't all his fault. He only got 6 rush attempts, and that was because the game script was just terrible. I mean, Tennessee just came out angry. They were obviously looking to avenge a couple of weeks prior their loss to Indy, and they've been on a roll lately. So negative game script did hurt him. The Colts just couldn't establish the run because they were having to come back from behind. And he did get somewhat involved. I know Nyheim Hines is kind of the running back to own right now in Indianapolis. But Wilkins did catch 3 passes for 35 yards, so that's encouraging. If Taylor is out next week, I think Wilkins is a very good start. Not just an ad, but a start, because going against Houston, the Texans have the 2nd worst defense in the league in terms of fantasy points allowed to running backs. It's a great spot for him. So Wilkins is going to be your sneaky ad of this week. And a lot of people are going to be off him. Get back on him. My number 2 pick is going to be a guy that I've been waiting and waiting and waiting. Finally, it could be happening. Cam Akers in LA. I'm not saying it's happening for sure because, you know, Sean McVay, he just loves to jerk around those fantasy owners, do the unpredictable. And even in a game where Akers was making explosive plays by far, he still had fewer carries than Darrell Henderson. But listen to this. Okay, Cam Akers ripped off that 61-yard run. I know that was most of his yards, but still 84 yards on 9 carries. Okay, Henderson had 10 carries, 19 yards. 19 yards on 10 carries. All right, on a day that they were stifled, they couldn't get anything going against the Niners. That defense suddenly awake again. Akers was the only spark that they showed late in the game and kind of kept them in it when he ripped off that run and then finished it with a touchdown. And then Malcolm Brown didn't do any favors either. He fumbled during that game. He looked like what he kind of is, just kind of a veteran backup presence. Akers, if they are smart, will get the ball more. Even if he only gets the ball a few times, we've seen what he can do just in those limited carries. He has that explosive ability. I'm not going to put full confidence in McVay and that coaching staff giving him the true lead back role, but there is some hope here. It's not a terrible or a great matchup with Arizona, but just in the fact that you've seen what Akers is capable of, he's definitely worth a stash to see what he could do down the stretch. But my number one pick is actually going to be a backup running back that could be thrust into a starting role, and that is Devontae Booker. Now, you might have seen Josh Jacobs holding his ankle, looked pretty serious when he left the game in that loss, that ugly loss to the Falcons. Not sure exactly what the status is. Early word is that maybe it looked worse than it really is, but still, an ankle sprain is not something to mess around with for a running back. There is a chance he misses this week. If it flares up later, there is a chance he's limited. Even if he does play, he might not be a full go. That would mean either way more carries for Devontae Booker, who has looked good in spurts this season, just as a backup to one of the true workhorse backs, which is Josh Jacobs, who's third in the league in rush attempts. Even as a kind of barely used backup, Booker has 3 games of more than 60 yards. He has looked really sharp. He's looked probably the best he has in his career. And this is a team that is able to run the ball, wants to run the ball. And here's the best part. Even if he is still just the backup, it's not a bad spot because it's the Jets. I know we love to rip on the Jets, but hey, I mean, you're a winless team. You have to take your lumps. So going against the Jets defense, this is a good spot for Booker, who should see an uptick at the very least in his usual role. So a great streamer and could be a really vital pickup. If Jacobs misses 1 week or even longer, who knows? So grab Booker now. He's the type of handcuff running back to stash now. Hopefully he did it a couple weeks ago when I first mentioned him, but if not, it's not too late. Go out and try to grab Booker right away. All right, that does it for running back waiver wire. Thanks for watching. Good luck in week 13 and beyond.